All right, dope. So we're gonna pick straight up. I gotta bust out of here like right at 7:55, so we're gonna keep cruising. So what we hit on last week, we were talking some about, if we're trying to like whether we're in a negotiation or we're trying to help somebody that's a friend of ours kind of see a different point of view, whatever that may be, the approach is so similar that it's worth just putting it in the same basket because ultimately a negotiation is exactly what is happening when it's your buddy you're trying to help. You're trying to help negotiate based upon their values, how to think differently, or you're trying to get to X on some kind of outcome that's favorable for you if this is like some kind of business deal or otherwise. And so, anybody have anything they remember from last week? We're going to go through a couple steps, but what was a couple key points we remembered from last week? And we'll just kick this thing off perfect. We'll go Socratic. Lucas, what's something you remember from last week, brother?
So we were talking about confidence and that there's always going to be that self doubt there at times, you know. So battling that, understand that that's just like flesh, and then also I think what stood out to me was just do, you know, that you got to get these repetitions in to build confidence, and so it starts with just doing.
100%. Yep. Totally agree. Somebody else, what you got? We'll go about 5 seconds, then I'll just fire on somebody. All right, sweet Hank, what you got?
Building rapport.
Yeah. Yep. And so what were a couple of things that we chatted about? If you can remember, if you can't, we can defer. But what were a couple tenets of that? Like, what are some things that help somebody to feel like you're connected on a same level there? Is it like them? Is it understanding them? Like, what were some of those points?
Um, Not exactly sure. We've kind of been talking about this in class, so I think I'm conflating things like mirroring techniques and stuff like that.
For
Um,
sure.
so yeah, I'm not exactly sure.
Man, mirroring is a great technique. In fact, what does mirroring mean?
So mirroring is essentially so like if you're crossing your arms, I'll kind of cross my arms too. Essentially, um, doing similar things that the other person is doing and maybe even like repeating the last three words to make them feel like you're listening to them without I don't know, being overboard or something like that. If you're doing what they're doing, it makes them feel like you're paying attention because you're almost mimicking them, not in an obnoxious way, but
Yeah, connection
Make,
because you have mirror neurons that make you connect. That's why when you lean in to kiss your wife and she leans back in, it's why you continue.
continue.
Like if you lean in and she's like, "What are you doing?" You're like, "Oh, that's the wrong approach right now. I guess being in a fight and kissing is probably not the right thing." And like you said, if you just repeat the last few words, you can do that over and over, and people will just keep talking.
You guys saw it. Yes. Did you see it? Right. So like Bill's initiated, he knows what mirroring is. And I just simply said continue. And then Bill did exactly what we're talking about. He expanded upon the thought to help make sure that we're on the same sheet of music. So it's a very organic thing. It's not weird. You know, Bill's wants to help out with the thought process. So it's like he finished and he goes, to get close, and then they continue. And I go, continue. And that's the mirror. Does that make sense? Everybody saw that? Yeah. What else do we got from last week? Tell you what, we'll just do it like this. Let me see if I can figure out how this thing works. Did that share on y'all's screen or no? All right. What you got, Alex?
Stacking good decisions to build confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Doing
Yep.
all the things you're supposed to be doing. So that way, when you step into the conversation, you don't have that bug in your ear going, man, you ain't worked out in forever. You looked at porn this morning. Like, you don't have an edge in the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Y'all can see that PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we'll press this. We use this as some launching points, and you guys will have access to this. We're going to throw it in a course that we'll pull some of this Zoom from, and we might like expand on some of these topics. But instead of kind of being a little nebulous, I just put this through. It'll sound like a lot, but it won't. It's just 9 steps. Again, that sounds like a shit ton if you say that to me, but it'll be organic. We'll show what it looks like and play with it. So first one is same thing we talked about. Deliver a strong introduction, right? So you're maintaining a confident demeanor. You're using warm and engaging tone and adopting, an open, approachable posture. So, somebody give me what a closed off posture looks like. That's it. Everybody's got the arms crossed, right? Something with that's kind of interesting that I'll do if we're both standing is I pretty much always stand like Superman, right? It's not an open posture. It's not a closed posture. It's just a confident posture. And I don't know if it's just organic that I do that, but it does always seem to make an impact for the conversations I'm in. And if you pay attention and you watch people, they'll start to model. So the next step that we're looking at is one in which I will definitely say this is a super powerful tool. However, you have to master step 3 before you do step 2. So I'm going to hit step 3 because if you don't know how to do step 3, then step 2 is going to absolutely destroy your situation. So I'm going to go to 3 first. At least I think I am. There we go. Right. So step 3 says, as we can see here, somebody talked to me a little bit about what this means, right? So we were talking about you introduce yourself and then immediately you're bringing up the topic. Why is that? Why are we going that route versus how's the weather doing?
Because you run the risk of talking for 10 minutes about stuff that doesn't matter.
For sure. And also, what do you think is happening maybe on the inter-emotional side of this?
You're just going like, oh, I'm just going to talk to you and nothing really matters. You're going to be like, hey, so by the way, and then you're just dropping in the heavy after you made it seem like really nothing's the problem.
Okay, that's
The-
definitely a possibility as well.
If you're new to this, you're probably nervous.
Yeah, the
And you're going to
nervousness
ramble.
it's gonna creep up higher and higher for sure. Yep. And so when we're bringing up this topic, right, we want to ensure it feels natural and relevant. What does that mean? Like, as let's give me any kind of point here that you guys can think of that would be a topic of conversation. What are we bringing up to somebody? That way we can talk about the differences.
Showing up late to work.
Okay, perfect. Showing up late to work. And so natural and relevant versus unnatural and relevant, the two ways that would go, right? So give me a bad example of how to bring that up.
Hey, bro, why the hell were you late?
All right. And that's almost neutral for me. I don't think that's a good way to bring it up, but at least it's direct and relevant, right? So what's an even worse example of that? Hint, hint, sarcasm.
So you went drinking last night and got hungover again or something?
Yeah, exactly. That or it's like, hey man, I mean, I guess if being on time's not a big deal to you, then I guess we should all just accommodate. Or XYZ. There's 100 ways that this could go wrong. So natural and relevant is just simply you're saying, hey, obviously you were here late. Help me understand what's going on here. Nice and simple. Make sense? You are addressing the topic on its face from a neutral tone. Help me understand what this looks like. Make sense?
Yeah, so with
Alternatively,
that, Jordan,
yeah.
step 3, you kind of ending with a question there, like to help me understand.
Okay, so that's a good point. So as you see where it says alternatively ask
Mm-hmm.
on the next one. So if it is a topic that I'm trying to help, let's say, persuade their outcome, or I'm trying to get permission from this person for something, if I'm trying to, if there's something that I am needing in this transaction, and transaction is just that. There's two sides to consideration. There's the value I bring and the value they bring. So if this is like a contractual conversation, I don't necessarily mean business, I just mean transactional, then I'm probably going to ask what that looks like so that I can understand what their value set that they're hoping to gain is, right? I want to know what they hope to gain in this transaction so that I can make sure two things. One, I don't allow their ask to be something I can't deliver. Or two, I want to make sure that the way in which I'm pitching my value is towards what they hope to gain. You know what I'm saying? And so if it's transactional, yes. If it's not transactional, like for instance, we made the kind of scenario yesterday where we were talking about you have a buddy who you're at lunch with who's like, flirting with the waitress. He's married with two kids and he's like, clearly heading down a path that sucks. In that case, I generally say something like, "Hey man, what's good?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" I say, "Well, it seems like you're flirting with that waitress." And he's like, "Oh, dog, you can look on the menu, you just can't order." In which case, my alternative here is like, "All right, well, if looking on the menu seems to be a good idea, what do you think that looks like down the road?" Make sense? So if it's not transactional, it's interventional. I'm trying to help them in their life. I just love them. And, you know, one of my favorite things from the Bible is in Ezekiel. Basically, God is saying, "Son of man, you are to be the watchman, and your job is to tell the Israelites where they're messing up. And if you do that, then the blood is on their hands. If you don't do that, then the blood is on your hands." And I do believe that we as men are supposed to be watchmen for each other. And so if I see my brother living in some way that I think if I don't say something to them, then that's going to lead to a poor outcome for their life, I very much feel like the blood is on my hands if I don't say something. So I tend to be very interventional in that. And the way I try to do it is if that seems like a good idea, how do you think that's going to play out long term? And they might ask a clarifying question. "What do you mean, man? I'm just messing around." I'm saying, like, if you want to have great intimacy with your wife, you want to grow, like, where do you see that going? Go ahead, Cam.
So this has been my influence, or experience. I'm wondering if it's yours. When you ask these questions and you get them to arrive at the conclusion on their own, the conclusion you want them to come to, but you lead them in that direction, do you find your influence more impactful when they come up with the solution themselves?
Absolutely. In fact, let's say that it's whether I'm trying to be interventional to help somebody or a negotiation where they have some kind of crazy ask. Getting somebody to have to say out loud how they arrived upon that value often kills the problem. You often don't have to deal with the problem anymore, right? So, like, let's say they're like, um, "I need you guys to go pick up, 3 trucks for this week's training." And it's like, I know that there's only 3 people that are going to be at the training, right? This is very arbitrary, but for the sake of, I go, "Okay, you want us to go pick up 3 trucks. We're all staying at the same place though?" "Yeah." "Okay. Are you thinking that we're going to like need a bunch of different moving pieces, or help me understand what the thought process looks like?" And they're like, "No, we need 3 because there's 3 of us." "Cool. So like what, like day in and day out, what do you think we're going to utilize those? How's that look?" And then, you can ask questions and sometimes they'll say, "Yeah, well, we might go somewhere." And as Bill said, I'd be like, "Somewhere?" You know what I mean? And I just let them sort it out until eventually like, "Yeah, we probably don't need 3 vehicles." Like they'll often say that or come to that conclusion without me having to go, "We don't need 3 vehicles." You know what I mean? So that's a very quick modeled answer to that. But yeah, that's more or less what I do is I just try to get people talking long enough. Go ahead, Cam.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Oh,
You're- yeah.
right. What you got, Bill?
Just one easy thing that I've learned from the coaching stuff is to not use why because it's accusational, and just use open-ended questions, which means if you start your question with what or how, it will open conversation. But if you just tell people stuff, it closes it down. Or if you ask them one, two, or yes, no questions, it does not encourage them to think. So just change to how and what, and it helps you remain curious.
That's it. And so this step 3 maybe is the most important point for absolutely everything, because there's a ton of times where people will leave conversations and say, I wish I would have said, I wish I would have brought up, I wish I would have done this, I wish I would have done that. Step 3 is everything. Listen, you can absolutely fuck up how it goes. You can mess everything up. But if you're willing to bring up the topics, then you're going to get more reps in this space, and you're going to eventually get to the point where your impact is better. You have to do step 3. I don't care if like you walk up with like the dead fish hand and you're like crippled and looking down and you're like, hey, so why don't you help me understand what that looks like with your wife long term? I don't care. If you'll do step 3, you can mess everything else up and you will help the situation, right? You might blow up the deal you're on, you might everything else, but it doesn't matter because the challenges build the characters comes from the reps. So just do step 3, bring it up. Now, we'll go back to step 2. And there's nothing else on here. It just says pattern breaker, but this is only after mastering step 3. Okay. So meaning, somebody give me what I mean. What are we thinking here? What would a pattern breaker be?
So would this be like a pattern interrupt?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So doing something out of the norm in the moment to like kind of break the ice.
Yeah. So what's some ways that we can go about this? Like some examples, some tangible steps, or let's create a quick scenario. All right. So what do we got? Somebody give us something. Let's think up some stuff. We could do a business deal. You guys could be on a trip, whatever it is. Let's get a scenario and we'll create a situation and see what a good pattern breaker would be. Somebody volunteer besides Bill, Cameron, and Lucas. I'll wait. All right, Slade, what you got?
Is this like any scenario?
Any scenario. It's up to you, dog. It's your world. What are we doing?
Maybe you're on a hiking trip. You two, like people get lost. Only two of you got compasses, and his is not calibrated.
All right, got it. And he wants to take your compass. Is that the problem?
No, he wants to take the wrong path.
Oh, perfect. All right. I love it. Okay, so in Slade's scenario, to make this pattern breaker work, there is you got a cliff next to you. You know what I mean? And so you're arguing back and forth on, or you're about to head to that situation where he's like saying, hey, I think we should go over here. And you're looking at your compass and you're like, that's definitely not it. Right? That's kind of what's happening here. Okay. So for this to work, you have some kind of anything that you can point to that is going to be absolutely ridiculous, that is not going to be considered sarcasm, that is going to go clearly, here's the deal, clearly against their concern. Is that like you're identifying their concern with this really heavy anchoring point, so that when you bring up the introduction, it's already softened the acceptance, right? And that might sound, what do you mean? Here's the example. So, Slade, let's say that you have the compass. Just put yourself off mute. We'll go back and forth. You have the crappy compass. I have the good compass, so I can show what this looks like, right?
Yeah.
And so we're going, and you go, hey, mine's saying we need to go this way. You say that, and I'll give you the pattern breaker.
Yo, mine's saying we need to go that way.
Oh, that's crazy. Look, mine's saying that I think it's telling us to walk over to this bear cave over here, right? Or, hey, mine's saying we should just go right off the side of this cliff right here. Does that seem right to you?
No.
Something that I'm going to anchor outside of this. And obviously, because we're not standing there, you can't like visually see the same outcome, but it's like if we're standing there and I'm like, I take my compass and I turn and mine's off the cliff and I'm like, I guess I'm going this way. You know what I mean? Like something that anchors it in a ridiculous way. Like you you also can just speak on something that has nothing to do with the topic at hand. You know what I mean? So like let's say Slade goes, mine's this way. So say that again.
Mine's this way.
Dude, did I step in bear shit? I got stuff all. You too. Is that on your pants? No? All right. I'm going to anchor some kind of pattern interrupt, just like that. Does that make sense? Like when we want to get some kind of thought process, I'm going to make some kind of joke if I can, but I'm going to try to break their pattern. What you got, Lucas?
You kind of did it there with that second example, but my question was, can this be a fit? Because we were talking about posture, right? Can this just be like a change in your posture? Or does it have to be verbal?
Yeah, I think all here's the way it works. Their brain, like this would be a more dramatic example that will help, but let's say it's a hurricane. I'm taking my team to go meet up with something. As I'm coming up, like there's a bunch of cops. They're concerned about anybody coming through this area, and we're allowed to do this, but they might not know who we are. And as I'm walking up to them, what is their pattern of thought saying to me? Their pattern of thought is, I'm not sure who these people are, but they can't come this way. That's where their brain's going to stay. So if I just come up and go, hey, how you doing? You know, I'm Jordan with Florida State Guard, blah, blah, blah. They're still on the same thought. Does that make sense? I don't want to let this person through here. So
Yep.
my pattern interrupt is I'm going to introduce something that is not in their current pattern of thought process. It either in a giant anchoring of the what I know they're concerned about, which again, this takes time to get finesse in this, or I'm going to do it on something completely different. And often the different will be something that they will hold in value. Okay. So, like, again, we can break some of this down into bullet points into sub videos after this, but as I'm walking up, I see their lights blank, going. And let's say there's 4 cars out there. As I'm walking up and I go to see them, I say, hey, how you doing? I'm Jordan, Florida State Guard. They go, how you doing? I go, damn, dude, y'all have the dopest rides. Where'd you get this type of whatever? Like, I'm jealous, man. I'm going to do something that breaks the pattern as opposed to just going straight to here we at, right? Or I might put both together. I might go, dude, how did y'all get so many vehicles down here? I've gone through 3 counties. This place is incredible, right? And they're gonna be like, what? And I go, all right, listen, I know you probably don't want anybody to come through here, but don't worry. I got about 50 more vehicles coming behind me. We're just gonna sneak through real quick, right? They're gonna be like, what? I'm like, I'm just messing with you, man. So there's 4 of us here. We've got these 4 vehicles. Here's where we're going. Does that seem like a big issue to you, or help me understand? Like, I'm going to do something that either anchors it at their biggest concern or something, and that's a more difficult game to play. A better game to play is finding something that will break their pattern otherwise. And the situation will often just create itself, right? So if you're walking up and, there's like, you can tell that there's one guy who's like young and he's got like a clean haircut and the rest of them don't. This is like same thing. I'm walking up and I'm looking observation wise to pick up any pattern I can break. And I come walking up and I go, hey man, is this y'all's mail? Is this Mr. February right here for for the police department? I'm going to say something that's going to make a joke, that's going to break pattern. And I'm going to do that with confidence as I'm approaching the situation. And that pattern break makes them go from they're not coming through here to what the hell did he say? Okay. And to back to me. Does that make sense? So if I were sitting down eating with a buddy of mine, yeah, go ahead, Cam.
Do you mind if I give a quick example of one I just
Please
did?
do. Yeah,
All
please
right,
do.
cool. So I went to Starbucks like a week ago, and the girl, it was like 5:30 a.m. The girl who was checking everyone out was in a horrible mood. She was being rude to everyone who stepped up. And I noticed that like 4 people behind. So when I got up there, I ordered my coffee, and then I ordered a second coffee, and I was like caramel macchiato, half sweetener, half sweetener, half cream with cheese. And like she starts typing it in, and then she realizes like I just asked for a coffee with cheese, and she looks at me like really shocked, and I'm like, yeah, with cheese. And she's like, seriously? I'm like, yeah, with cheese. So she's like looking at all the people working there, and they're all just staring at me like I'm fucking crazy. And I ordered the coffee with cheese, and I obviously didn't drink it. But for the next 45 minutes while I sat in there drinking my coffee, she was in a way different mood. And she had no idea that I just spent that $5 and asked her for something crazy and probably improved her day for the rest of the day. But
Yeah.
just crazy stuff like that, it's wild how it works.
It is. Yeah, everybody has the focus they're on. Breaking that pattern helps you to get tighter inside the circle of where their thought process is because you just introduced something that they weren't there for. And the more that that can be something that is humorous but not sarcastic, like you're not breaking something down in your joke, you're building something up in your joke, you're identifying something that's cool, you're whatever that is, the more that you can build up in your joke, the tighter they're going to let you into the circle, right? Any thoughts or questions on that? What you got, Ryan?
Cameron, you can't leave us hanging. How the hell do they serve it to you? Do they have a slice of cheese in the shit? Do they put it on the side? You can't just leave it like that. What happened?
I don't really know what they did. They had cheese in it. I didn't drink it. I didn't really look. I just looked crazy, and then they all like were laughing about it and talking about me, you know. So
Fantastic. Fantastic. That was a pattern interrupt, by the way, right?
yeah.
So fantastic job. So step three, like we said, you were showing up first, strong situation. After you've mastered making sure you can bring up the topic, then with reps, you can pattern break. Bring up the topic immediately after the pattern break. Step four, nice and simple, active listening. And so what does that look like? Give me some tangibles here, guys. So you're showing that you're pausing to reflect. What does inspect and catalog their thoughts mean?
Is that when you're repeating back to them?
No, it could be. It could be. So that's summary, right? So what we mean is as they're speaking to me, I want to inspect what they're saying and catalog their thoughts and their points. So why do we want to do that? Somebody besides Cam and Bill. What you got, Nate? Maybe Nate is just on video. Nate, you there? All right, what you got, Tom? I'm assuming turn is Tom.
Yeah, my bad. I would say could that be like head nods, like as they're talking, showing that you're like understanding and picking up like what it is that they're trying to get across to you?
Definitely. But the tactic of cataloging their thoughts, and maybe it's just not super clear. What do I mean? Is they're saying stuff to me and I'm cataloging their thoughts. What would the purpose of that be?
I guess for me it would be picking out like the important pieces of it.
Mhm. Yep. So building an outline in your mind is exactly that. As they're talking to me, I want to be literally like I'm looking at this PowerPoint in my mind, if you can visualize some of that. And I'm cataloging their thoughts on points of interest that seem to be the highest ticket items. And then additionally, I'm noting areas that need clarification. Does that track? Everybody understand that? So, if I ask Hank, like, Hank, tell me about the staccato.
Yeah, it's a double stack 1911.
What is a double stack 1911?
It's a all metal pistol, higher tolerances, so you can shoot a little smoother, but it's got more rounds to carry.
What's tighter tolerances mean?
So if you use a Glock and you ever see when the slide reciprocates, you can see the barrel move up and there's a lot of space in between the frame and the slide. There's a lot of extra movement there that can decrease accuracy and make it a little bit harder to shoot, a little flippier.
Okay. So it's like maybe the great value add of the staccato is like that it's more accurate because it's got tighter?
It's more precisely engineered so
Okay,
that, yeah, so it helps with accuracy and recoil.
got it. And then does that like affect its durability, or does it jam more or anything along those lines because of that?
Not so much with the slide. Some of Staccato's magazines have that issue, but there's third-party magazines that have somewhat solved that. But
Oh,
because the magazine used to be designed for a 40 caliber, but now it's pushing
mhm.
9 millimeters in there, that's where a tolerance issue can come in because sand can cause some feeding issues.
That makes sense. Why would you like go with that over like a Glock or, a SIG or something along those lines? Like what is the big value add for you?
Well, if we're talking like a law enforcement context to where we're not doing sustained movements in
Mm,
really austere environments, and I know that I can take care of my weapon system, I would much rather shoot faster and accurately, even if it's a second better than I do with my own Glock, for a very important situation, than just make sure that it's like a little bit more durable if, I
right.
throw it out of a plane.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so before I give the catalog back, anybody else cataloging the thoughts here? What do we got? Give us some catalog. What are his values? Why are those things valuable? Like, what do we got for Hank here? What you guys later?
Just makes me think the difference between like a Toyota versus a BMW.
Hmm.
Like the Glock sounds more like a Toyota
Hmm.
than a BMW, which needs more care, still runs better.
Right. More care to higher performance, right? But on catalog and thoughts here, why was that important to him?
Because he can pull it out and it'd be faster than the Glock,
Hmm.
other than his need for a Glock, which would have more durability.
Right, exactly. And why did the situation he's in not need the higher durability? What was the justification for that?
Was he had like, more time to, to clean it and stuff other than like what the Glock would be used for like a couple of days.
That's pretty much spot on. So in his kind of risk to reward assessment here, as we're cataloging Hank's thoughts, it's like, okay, as I walk this down, and I asked my clarifying questions as we went, so you guys see this, right? So the next step of this is repeat the cycle of clarifying questions, ask targeting questions to deeper understanding, ensure the questions show genuine curiosity. I'm a naturally curious person, so that's easy for me. But if you're not, then you just got to make sure you're not going, well, why would you want that? Right? Because that's obviously sounds like you don't agree with those things. Does that make sense? So for Hank in this, his catalog is he went like this, and he does the same thing everybody does. They open with a bunch of the what's, and you have to sort through the what's so you can figure out why those what's are important to him. Does that make sense? So he said, I go, tell me about the staccato. And he goes, well, it's a double stack 1911. And then I assumed I didn't know what that was. And I assumed that there could be people here that don't know what that was. So I was like, okay, well, what's that? And he's like, it's a pistol. It has tighter tolerances. And then I said, well, what does tolerances mean? That's my clarifying question, right? Because again, if you're super intuitive, that might make sense. But if you don't know a ton about guns, I don't mean like you don't have a gun. I mean like these are very gun specific terms. So he says tighter tolerances. And I go, okay, well, what's that mean? He's like, well, when it comes, you shoot it, the slide goes back and the barrel kind of lifts up. There's less space in there. So the gun cycles quicker and the trigger pull is a little shorter. And I was like, clarifying question. Well, what about that is like important to you? And he's like, well, if I'm taking it out and I'm shooting it, I want it to be fast and accurate compared to any other pistol. And then my last clarifying question was like, well, why not a Glock or something like that? How does it tolerate compared to that? And he gave his ultimate why at the very end, which is, and a good justified behind that why is, I want to make sure that this pistol can come out, get the job done quickly, and I'm not worried about the tighter tolerances because it's not going to be in a setting where it's in the desert for 30 days and needs a super quick, regular cleaning on this, like a good oil, base on this. 5 days, it'll be fine. Even 30 days will be fine, but the durability is probably not justified as opposed to the higher risk if I got to pull this gun out and use it right away. Like that was kind of the catalog thoughts there. And so what you got there, Lucas?
Yeah, with the clarifying questions, how do you like know basically, so that because Bill had mentioned like ask questions with how or what, stay away from the why. So with clarifying questions, how do you not come across as like almost disguising a why in there, like kind of attacking their thought? Like how do you know when to stop with the clarifying questions, if that makes sense?
No, man, it's a good question. What is that hat there that you have on? I'm just trying to check that thing out.
Oh,
Sorry.
it's Sagewood Builders, my company hat.
What's that? What is that?
It's it's my brother and my company. We're general contractors, so construction
neat.
company in Park City.
Like, are you guys building from the ground up, or are you doing like remodels? Like, what's that look like?
Yeah, so we'll do some new builds, but we tend to get a lot of like historic remodels here in Park City, so like total house renovations.
Oh, you're in Park City.
Oh yeah.
Oh, for some reason I thought you were in Texas as well.
No, man. No, Park City in the mountains.
Yeah, that's a beautiful area out there.
Yeah,
How,
for
how
sure.
long have you been building houses now?
So grew up kind of around it, but been with my brother for the last 3.5 years out here. My wife and I moved out here,
Where were you from before that?
originally from Connecticut.
Okay, cool. What took you guys out there then? That's crazy. That's far.
Utah wasn't really in the cards. My wife and I were just looking for a community, honestly.
Yeah.
And then in seeking out, searching for a community, the job presented itself. I flew out, checked it out, and
Because your brother was already out there or what?
Yeah, brother was out here. He had
Oh,
been out
nice.
here for like 17 years.
Wow. Do you have any other family or just your brothers out there?
So he's married and has 2 kids. But that's it for immediate family.
You guys got the uncle and aunt thing going on for now?
Yeah,
or- Yeah.
yeah, man, yeah.
What's that like?
It's fun. I mean, his boys are a lot of fun. So we get to go hang out and then give them back too, which is nice.
Definitely. All right. So my question for you is, did any part of that feel offensive or intrusive?
No,
That's exactly it.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
yep,
So
for
what,
sure.
what was my pattern break?
Your pattern break was the Park City. I think initially started to ask about
Way back, very first question. What was it?
oh, the hat. What's
hat.
on my hat? Yeah,
That's that.
what's on?
What you
Yeah,
got
I
here?
didn't even know what you were doing at first. So I was like, oh, he really wants to know about my hat.
I did. Listen, I genuinely did want to know about the hat.
Yeah.
That's why it doesn't come across the wrong way. What you got, Ethan?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say the hat, but also even before Lucas started, I did have a clarifying question myself, and he was really touching on this too. Was the firearm one was maybe a little bit harder for me to track because I knew that you were like, I didn't know if it was just for example, because those were questions that I knew that you probably knew the answer to.
Right.
For
right.
this one with Lucas, like I don't know your guys' relationship. Like maybe you didn't know the answer to all these questions, so this was a lot easier for me to picture. But my question would be like, obviously you're asking clarifying questions to show that you're invested in them and what they're saying. But I couldn't tell, like, are you sometimes asking questions that you already know the answer to just to show them interest? Or like Lucas said, because obviously you want to be aware of that because that could kind of weird people out too.
Yeah, it depends on the total situation. My general impression is nobody hates talking about themselves. I don't want to say that's true. Like, I'm hard to pull answers out of. There are people, but if you had to say, I'm sitting here and I'm talking to somebody, would I rather like have an awkward silence or talk about things that are interesting to me in my life? Generally, people would like to talk about things that they hold in value. So asking them questions about things they hold in value won't really be intrusive. And if it is intrusive and the person's completely like, nah, that's fine. There's nothing you could have done that would have made that go better. That's just a sour deal and it is what it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so just like toe the line between being invested and also like not asking too many questions that they know that you know the answer to.
No, that's fair. If we're close, and I will ask questions that I know the answer to. I definitely will, but they will be um you guys familiar with Johari's window? You guys heard of this? Okay, in Johari's window, it's broke up into 4 grids. Okay. And in the first grid is the things that you know about yourself and others know about you. That's called in the open, right? I could put this on a slide later. And then what happens is there's stuff that other people know about you that you don't know about yourself. That's called your blind spot, right? Then on the bottom little grid down here is stuff that you know about yourself, but others don't. That's called hidden. There's plenty of things that you guys know about yourself or collectively with you and your spouse that other people don't know, right? Like, namely, what your intimacy looks like. That's a hidden area. That's not stuff you're going to share. And then the last on Johari's window is what you don't know about yourself and what they don't know about you, right? And that's the unknown. Like, and what happens through time is as I'm being more vulnerable in the world and I'm figuring out how to sort through this, I create the opportunity for more people to be able to tell me areas that help me not have the same blind spots. So with that same thought in mind, I will ask questions I know answers to in one of 2 situations. One, I want to reinforce to them that I know and they know, right? So like if it were the guy who was at the restaurant who was not doing what he should by his wife to be or whatever, I would say, I know he's married. I go, hey, you're married, right? You know what I mean? Like, I know and he knows, but I'm saying it so I can establish the situation of that, right? And you guys promise to be together forever. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's an example. That's not how I would go about that, but I am just saying that I will ask questions that I know that he knows, that I know the answer to for a kind of a strategic purpose. But generally, the reason I'm going to ask questions that I know the answer to is because I arrived upon that information and I don't want to burn how I got that information. I don't want to burn the messenger that cared. And often, so like let's say, you know, Bill and I are having a problem with Hank, right? Because Hank's doing something crazy, and Bill's like, "Hey, man, I talked with Hank. He did something crazy. I know you'll see him this week. Maybe you can help him out." I'm not going to necessarily go up to Hank. And that, by the way, that's not gossip because the intent of that conversation is not to break Hank down, it's to build Hank up. And that is the you know, delineating line between the two. So, you know, he goes, maybe you can help him out. So when I ask Hank, hey, Hank, what's good, man? How's the week going? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm asking qualifying questions as I'm interacting with him. I already know the answer, but I'm asking questions that I know the answer to so I can relevantly bring up the topics to make the impact. So to your point, Ethan, I did not know those things about Lucas. So that was just a genuine curiosity played out. I did not know those answers. I thought he lived in Texas, to be honest, because that's where Jacoby lives. And I know at one point his wife lived over there. His wife is Jacoby's wife's sister, right? So I just met Lucas through the Uncommon Tribe. I hadn't known him a ton out of this. And obviously, you know, organically, we're all kind of growing here together. And so it seems like relationships have lasted longer than they are. But to that point, I'm going to do exactly that, Lucas. We'll pick up next week on this right after this point on what the remaining of the steps are, but they're actually super simple if you can hit these first ones. But I'm going to ask clarifying questions, what and hows, so that here's the deal. You told me that you lived in, everybody make sure you catch this last point. I didn't get why it was important, why that hat was important to Lucas until I got about 10 questions into that. And the reason that hat is important to Lucas is because it literally is like a symbol from the community he hoped to have, the new beginnings that came there, the success he got with his brother, the growth of them together, like all magnified under like almost a single symbol of this hat is not just a business, it's a movement from Connecticut to Utah, and it's like a beginning with the wife. Like there's a lot of emotion that is in that hat that maybe when he goes to pick it up, it's not even something that's on his mind, but it feels good to grab it, right? Is that ballpark right, Lucas?
Yeah, I'd say you nailed it.
All right, perfect. So that was my clarifying summary, by the way, with Lucas back, is that on par? So I don't know what is valuable to Lucas until I ask enough questions so I can catalog the story. We all have a story. I'm cataloging the story of what's happening so I can understand what the book is about. That's true for negotiation, it's true for helping somebody. So if it were my buddy at the bar, and I go, what do you think that looks like long term? And he says, oh man, it's not that big a deal. Now I'm going into, why is that not a big deal to you? And I'm going to walk him all the way back to figure out whether he values his wife or he doesn't. And if he has value for his wife, then we'll go on to the next steps. If he doesn't, then that's a little different, but we'll hit the next steps either way. So I'm going to ask those questions until I can truly understand what Lucas's point of view is on this topic. And then I can start to the next step. Thoughts, questions, summaries? Anybody got any last thing before we close it up?
I have one question.
Yep.
Can you clarify exactly why you were utilizing the pattern interrupt? I understand how it works, but why do you do it?
In the case of Lucas, or period?
Period.
Because for people like other people that you guys have personal conversations that are not based upon professional outcomes. Like when you sit down with your buddies, you'll have all of the conversations you have are the type of things that you discuss in pattern interrupts. So it's like if we're sitting down, we're hanging out, and be like, what's this dude doing? Made on TV or whatever. They're all pattern interrupt stuff. Like that's what you guys laugh over. And so I'm showing you, hey, we can be like that. It doesn't, we can be professional, but we also can be cool. What you got, Slade?
I was gonna say, is Kramer from the show Seinfeld? Is he basically there for a pattern interrupt?
He is exactly that. Like that show personifies a lot of what rapport looks like, actually. So it's like Jerry's on topic, on issue, right? The whole time. Elaine is like just causing a little bit of controversy in there, but like Kramer is the pattern interrupt. And in fact, that, to your point, the reason that's so entertaining is the same reason why a pattern interrupt works with all of us, because I'm over here and I got this thought, and then all of a sudden the Kramer thought comes in, and you get to enjoy that difference, that different stimulation, that variety of what's going on in your head. And then you can get back on the main topic of the show. So that's exactly what's happening in speech there. Yeah, that was really good. Slade, you take over next time, man. Your analogies are better than mine. Awesome. All right, Slade, pray us out.
Dear Jesus, thank you for stay. Thank you for letting us all get on this meeting. And let's continue to have a great rest of our day, and we learn the lessons that Jordan has taught us, and let us continue to have a great rest of our day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right. So you get in the push-up position until I get there. All
Hey, I like how you Jordaned him and not dadded him right there. on
Well,
that
you know
prayer,
what?
too.
You know what
Like,
he's modeling? He's modeling me referencing my dad on here.
Well
That's
done.
it. It's funny how that works. That's it. All right. Hey, put on the gloves. I'm coming. All right, man. Y'all have a great day, brothers.
Have a good
Sweet,
weekend,
thanks.
guys. See you.
See ya.
Yeah.